Hey, geography students, this is Mr. Tronson, and today I want to talk to you guys about migration. When you see the word migration, think moving. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how people move around the world. Particular, why do they move, and some ways in which we analyze how people are moving. So let's get started. All right, so why do people migrate? I want you to ask yourself these questions. Is there any reason why a family would have to leave a country? Is there any reason why a family would want to move to one country or state? Right. So think about those two questions. Is there some reasons why someone has to move? And is there a reason why someone would want to move? Well, what we get at for those is those are things called push and pull factors. So when you think about just the idea of pushing, I want you guys to consider somebody else pushing you. Okay. So if I am in a country and there is a war, man, that's kind of pushing me out because I got to keep my family safe. If I've had a loss of job, or if there's been a natural disaster and my home's been destroyed, if I don't have religious freedoms, if I have not have a job in this area, those are all reasons why you would get pushed out, sort of like a force just kind of pushing you out. I really can't be here anymore because the things that are happening here are pushing me out of the area. Now, the other option here then is to pull, right? Something that pulls you in, something that's like, hey, give this a try. Like maybe there's a new job opportunity. Maybe you have a family member that's like, hey, I just got a real good setup here. Why don't you move to where I am? It could be better schools. It could be a better climate, nice warm weather that might pull someone from where they are to the new place. The two ways in which you need to know this, I want to show this to you guys right here. You see that word emigrate? I want you guys to write down the word exit. So when you guys see this on your sheet, please write the word exit next to the word emigrate, because that's how you remember exit, emigrate. You are exiting the country. So you are leaving. So someone that leaves a country is an immigrant. When you see the word immigrate, I want you to write the word in, I-N, which means that you are going into a country if you are an immigrant. So if you are an immigrant, you are leaving. If you are an immigrant with an I, you are entering, you are going in, excuse me, to a country. So when we look at migration, we always want to figure out were there any push or pull factors that were causing people to leave. When you look at the three types of push or pull factors that are most common, they are environment, economic, and political. So when you look at this full list right down here at the bottom, you could categorize what they are. Are they environmental? Are they economic? Or are they political? So we want to try to figure out which ones they are, because it'll help us better understand what's causing them to emigrate or what's causing them to immigrate. Some terms to know. If you guys have ever worked with a sponge, I don't know if you've ever heard of something being absorbing, right? But think of that if you are a country and you are bringing in or gaining population, it's sort of like a sponge gaining water. So it's absorbing. So absorption is the gaining of a population. If you have dispersion, it means your country is losing population. So if a country has absorption, most likely they've got a lot of good things going for them. They've probably got good jobs, good education, good healthcare, and it's pulling people in. If you have dispersion, most likely you probably have had some things that have caused people to struggle. Maybe it's war, maybe it's health issues, maybe it is climate problems as far as like droughts or hurricanes or something, but it has pushed people out of your country. So, a couple of terms just to be aware of. Check out the global migration patterns. As you look at this map, note that the countries with the greatest number of immigrants, people coming into the country, is red. So check out the red ones. The countries that have the greatest number of immigrants, so people that are being pushed out, those are blue. Check out the blue ones. And number one destination is the United States. And well, okay, we should be more specific here. The number one destination is the United States and Canada. Right, both of these are highlighted in red. So let's make sure we identify both of those. Okay, so types of migration. As you look at migration, the first one hopefully jumps out at you is international migration, right? International, going from one country to another. I always think of in an airport, right? The international flights going from Spain to the United States. Some of you might have even flown an international flight before, which is awesome. The other two are interregional and intra-regional. This means that you are already in a country and now you're making moves. So let's talk about the first one. Interregional migration, it means you're going from one region of the country to another. So if I'm looking at this, it would be migration from, let's say, the South to the Midwest. If I go back in time, I could talk about people going from the East Coast traveling into the wild, wild West, right? Um, if I if I am in a region that is outside of the one that we are in right now, right? So if I'm from California and originally, and then I moved to Minnesota, that is an interregional migration, because I'm going from one region to another. Um, Also be aware of that there are things called population centers, which is the average location of everyone in the country. You guys could probably think to yourself, what are population centers? Well, probably New York, probably LA, probably Atlanta are three examples for sure of population centers. So just to be clear, by moving from one region to another, that's interregional. All right. The other one is intra-regional. Check out that letter A. All right. The letter A is to help you remember that you are already in the region. Okay. The movement within a region. So the A is already in the region, which would mean that if I am in Minnesota and I am in the Twin Cities and I move from Robbinsdale to Coon Rapids, I have just done an intra-regional migration. Does that make sense? Um, Moving from cities to suburbs or rural areas, all of those would be intra-regional migration. If I moved from Illinois to Minnesota, that's an intra-regional migration. Um, and most often you will see people that are looking for a better job, maybe a better housing situation. A lot of the times you'll see this move because it doesn't cost a lot to move from one city to another, from one close by state to another. Most often, those are moves that happen more often than not. So, this is the one that I am assuming that most of you listening have done. You've done intra regional migration. If there is anybody who is watching this who has been born and raised in the same home, that's awesome. Good for you. Not many of us can say that. In fact, I've moved 9 times in my lifetime, if you can imagine that. So, all right. Um, Understand that there is another term just to throw out to help you with the understanding of this concept. There is counter urbanization. So if you think urban, think downtown Minneapolis, right? Now, counter urbanization. So instead of being in the downtown area or even a suburb area, counter urbanization is, instead of everybody wanting to move into the cities, you have people wanting to live in the country. Something that you've actually seen happen. Let me show you guys a little graph here to make my point. For on average, now this is data from 2010. On average, you had roughly almost 5 million people that wanted to move out of the suburbs and move into, um, um, excuse me, move out of the city and move into the suburbs. There's about 5 million people that have done that move, according to data from 2010. But an interesting fact, you have 2 million, 2.5 million people who have moved from the suburbs into the cities. Yeah, it's going to be a concept we're going to be talking about later called gentrification. It's going to kind of pull people into the downtown areas. But then this one right here, the one that we just talked about, counter urbanization, you do have people that move from the suburbs into non metropolitan areas. So the country, something that you do see, it's not the um, biggest number on here for sure, but it is something that does happen when you talk about migration or moving. So when we talk about migration or moving, everybody in here, I think, can understand the concepts of migration. So now I want you to look at your own life. What I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to write a letter. There is a link on the assignment for today that I want you to do. I want you to write your migration story. So if you would please write down when you moved to Coon Rapids, what city you came from, and then give the reasons. Why did you move? Were there any push factors? Were there any pull factors? You might find that a lot of us have push and pull factors, but it just depends on our story, and each of our stories are unique. So I'd like you to please write yours out. Write your migration story. There is always the opportunity or the reality that none of that you haven't moved. If there is anybody in here that has not moved, I want you to pick a place that you would like to move to someday and then explain the reasons why. Even if you have to make it up, I do want you to do this. All right. I want you to give reasons why you would move to this new place. So even if you're like, I love where I live, just pick a place then that you'd like to travel and then write down the reasons why you'd want to move there. Last thing that we're going to ask you to do is we want you to identify the push and pull factors, kind of highlight them in your reading, or excuse me, in your writing. So I would like you to circle all the push and pull factors. Also, if you could identify the international, interregional, or intra-regional migrations that you've done by drawing boxes around those answers. So really two things you're doing. It's either going to be circles or it's going to be drawing boxes. If you could do those, we would really appreciate it. And that, everybody, is our presentation on migration. Thank you guys for listening.